I try to remember what it was like for myself navigating a new institution and navigating new physical spaces and trying to get connected with support systems and mentors and the importance of those folks. And so I really try to remember that every day when I'm working with my own students, to walk in and to see them and they see me and they're smiling. And it's that connection that happened there through writing that then transcends into the community.
Hello and welcome to UNA Talks. I'm your host, Lee Taylor. Today, our guest is Dr. Andrea Hunt. And we're so glad that you have joined us today. This episode and every episode of UNA Talks, we just sit with our amazing faculty here at the university and discuss topics of research, what's going on in the world, to gain their insights and to ask them all the tough questions that you would want to ask anybody who's an expert in their field like Dr. Hunt. So we're excited to have her here today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Andrea is a professor of sociology here at the university. You are also involved with our first generation students. You are the sponsor for the high school STEM camp that we host here. And you do, I think, 35 other things. You were the faculty senate president up until recently, so we can cross that off the list for now. You're also an associate licensed counselor, and you work with the child welfare system locally.
Yes.
What else are we leaving out here?
Oh my gosh, I work with a lot of boards in the community and volunteer with a lot of organizations, and so I stay pretty busy between things on campus and activities in the community.
That's awesome. I feel like everybody I talk to, all of our professors and faculty and so much of our staff are just so involved in so many different things in the shoals that are not necessarily always included in their bio, but it's if you want something done, ask a busy person. And you guys are really remarkable with how much of the load you carry sort of in the community and on campus. So cool. Thanks for sharing your busy schedule with us today.
Well, and we're as faculty, we're pretty privileged to be able to be a part of the community in the ways that we are and to work at a university that supports that involvement.
Yeah. UNA is really like, I'm biased because I work here too, but UNA is really at the center of the community in every way. It sort of doesn't have a choice in some ways, and in other ways it's so intentional with how we spend our resources in that, and you're a great example of that. So again, thanks for being here. So Andrea, I just want to know a little bit about your background and sort of how you came to UNA, how you came into this field of study, and why advocacy for underserved communities is so important to you.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with my journey into higher education because that's really crucial to how I ended up at UNA. So I started at a community college, Coffeyville Community College, home of the Red Ravens in southeastern Kansas. And I was one of those students who came in with an idea of what I wanted to do, but life continued to throw me some curveballs. And so my journey was not on a timeline that I thought it was going to be. And it took me many, many years to make my way through an associate's degree. And so I, was in and out of school because I had to work, like many students today have to do as well. And, the thing that always brought me comfort was that no matter what I had to do, if I had to leave and work, if I had to take a semester off, that school was always there because it was a central part of the community. And so one day I got a letter that said, "You have taken enough credits to graduate from community college." And back then, you really were just on your own, taking classes, following, the schedule, and you really didn't have advisors and all the supports that we have today for students. And so that put me in a position where I had to really figure out what I wanted to do next and to make some decisions about what was the next step for me. And coming from a family where nobody had graduated college, I was really on my own with my family and people around me, trying to offer me some suggestions, but I was really had to figure out what I wanted to do next. And so I found a small little university in Oklahoma, Rogers State University. And the year that I started there, they had transitioned from a community college to a 4-year university. So I got to be a part of the first cohort of students that were admitted to that 4-year program. And I had gone through high school thinking I was going to be an athletic trainer, and that's what I wanted to do. And that's not what I ended up doing. And throughout that process, you learn so much about yourself. You learn about the things that you like, that you don't like. And my interest shifted a little bit, and I decided to go the route of social and behavioral sciences. And I had several faculty members there at that university who were just really life-changing for me. I took my first sociology, well, not my first sociology class, but my first upper division sociology class. It was the juvenile delinquency class, and my professor, Dr. Newcomb, was amazing. And it was in that class that so many things clicked for me in terms of understanding myself, understanding my friends in high school, understanding my community, understanding my family. And that just sent me into really a deep dive into more of that understanding. Yeah. And so I was able to take classes in psychology and sociology and history and political science that gave me a lot of different perspectives on some of the issues that communities face.
Yeah, and you have such insight because of your background now with the students that you work with, being a first generation student yourself. And whenever we say first generation student, we mean someone who's parents didn't go to college or anyone in their family before. And UNA still has a really, a thriving population in that sector that you work with hands-on. So how do you find, that part of your story, how do you find that it helps you connect with students today and with maybe even not only students who are first generation, but those who are struggling with what they want to major in or, the undecided?
Well, as you mentioned, UNA has a large percentage of students that are first gen. I think we're at roughly at about 21% of our students are going to be the first in their family to graduate. And, I remember, my college journey, it feels like it was just yesterday, even though it was, decades ago. And really trying to figure out for myself, what does it mean to, go to advising? What is it, what does this mean? What does this term mean? Of sometimes those things that we just assume people know, and they may not know, and there may be some confusion about that. And so I try to remember what it was like for myself navigating a new institution and navigating new physical spaces and trying to get connected with support systems and mentors and the importance of those folks. And so I really try to remember that every day when I'm working with my own students or just students here at UNA about the difficulty sometimes of just navigating new spaces, trying to figure out how to build a community in a new space that you're in or feeling that you belong someplace. And so oftentimes first-generation students can struggle with that imposter syndrome of, do I belong here? And so we do a lot of work at UNA to make students realize and see that they do belong here, and so that they have that sense of belonging, that deep sense of, this is where I'm supposed to be and I can do this.
Yeah. And someone did that for you.
Yeah. And I still, both of those professors, Dr. Newcomb, Dr. Elwell, I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Elwell, who was the dean at the time at my undergraduate institution. And so I got to help work on a book that he was publishing. And so I spent many, many hours in the library, doing research, exploring sociological theory. And it were those experiences that really led me to going to graduate school. And Dr. Elwell had said, you should go to graduate school. And I said, well, what is that? You mean there's something else after this? Because I thought you got a bachelor's degree and you were done. But yeah, I didn't know there was all this stuff after that. And so,
and it's just like the rest of your experience. Yeah. We assume that, there's this literacy going into college that so many students just don't have. We take that for granted.
So I ended up going to the University of South Alabama to complete a master's in sociology. So I went from Kansas and Oklahoma to the South for the first time, and had a wonderful, amazing experience down at South Alabama, and worked with my faculty mentor, Dr. Nicole Carr, and was helping on a grant that she had along with Dr. Roma Hanks, and we were evaluating a juvenile aftercare program. So this was funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And so I was going out in the community doing research. And so this was the first time that I started to connect my interest in sociology with what I could do with sociology. So up until that point, it really was for me about the transformative power of education, that I could see myself in different ways, because up until then I had really given up on myself in so many different ways of not knowing what I was going to do with my future, not really having a direction. And then when I started learning about sociology and psychology, I started to have a different sense of who I was and my capabilities. But I didn't really know what I was going to do with the degree or what kind of career that was going to lead to. I just felt very empowered that I could learn stuff. I had the capabilities to do well in college, and that I could believe in myself. And so when I went to graduate school, was really a time for me to connect, well, what does this degree mean in terms of career opportunities? And that's where I learned about applied sociology. So taking that theoretical knowledge, those concepts that we learn about, and then putting that into the community. And so I was traveling all over Mobile County. Back then you had your MapQuest directions and no GPS, no phone with you, traveling all over, getting survey data from youth who had been discharged from Growth Facility for Girls and Camp Martin Leadership Academy for boys. And so I was getting this follow-up data on recidivism. And so had they reoffended or done anything that would violate, their probation and have them sent back to Strickland Youth Center. So I was just in communities, and I got to see Mobile County in so many different ways, and got to travel into rural parts of Mobile County and spend time with youth and families and talk to them about their aspirations. What did they see themselves doing? How did they see themselves in the future? And what were the supports that they needed to be able to go from where they were at into a future that they wanted? So again, even there, I had that mentorship of somebody who really helped me see not only what a degree was or what studying in a certain discipline was, but how that can be put into practice with communities and how that can lead into career pathways.
What was the biggest difference culturally that you experienced? Because you were moving from Kansas and you went to in Oklahoma. What was the biggest cultural difference that you experienced, especially working in underserved communities in Mobile? I mean, these are kind of different worlds in a sense, different cultures in a lot of ways. So what was the biggest, adjustment maybe that you had to make to get your head around what this new world was like, and while you're learning how to do your practice? What were some of the biggest challenges in front of you at that time?
When I went down to Mobile was where I really gained a better understanding of rural poverty. And it was poverty at a level that I hadn't really seen before. And then looking at the intergenerational levels of poverty and how families were navigating that, how families were trying to make their way out of poverty. And so that was something that looked different where I was at. So although, there's poverty in southeastern Kansas, it looked different there than it did in, Mobile County. And so really being able to learn about the history of being in the Black Belt and what that looked like, and the systemic issues related to poverty and racism in that area, and how that contributed to different outcomes for families. And so that was the first time that I really got to see that in real life. And it was taking it from, you read about these things, but then seeing it in real life.
What parts of yourself were you maybe surprised to find in those communities, right? Like what were some of the ways that maybe were easier to connect with people than you expected?
Well, growing up in a small rural community, there is just a sense of connection with people in all rural areas.
Right.
You have some
shared resources,
shared understanding of what it's like to grow up in rural areas. Sure. And so there was a lot of commonality in my life experiences and the experiences of the families that I was working with. I had made a lot of mistakes as a teenager. I had gone down some wrong paths and was in a lot of unsafe situations. And so working with teens that had some of those same experiences, I could really empathize with what they were going through and what their families were going through. And so even though we were, from different regions, there was a lot that brought us together in terms of common experiences, but also just the ability to hold space for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. So then you're in Mobile, or you're getting your graduate degree at USA.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to Florence? What led you to UNA?
Well, I ended up going to North Carolina State University to get my PhD and stayed there for another year after I graduated for a postdoc. And I saw the job ad come up. And the job ad was from here. And they were looking for a faculty member who could teach family sociology, who was interested in applied work, who could teach classes related to all the interests that I had. And I read that and I said, this is the place. This is the place. This is where I'm going to end up at.
And when was that you saw that?
So I ended up starting here in 2013. Okay. So that was in 2012. And I was interviewing at a lot of other places. But when I saw the job ad for here, I knew it was the place.
Yeah.
And then when I started looking into UNA and the community, I knew I wanted to come back to a regional university. I had attended regional universities and understand the vital importance of a regional university to the community, and that's what I wanted to be a part of. And I wanted to work with students who were coming from this community, and I wanted to be a part of something like this. And so when I read that, I just thought it has all the things that I'm interested in. This is really meant to be. What
would you say? I mean, you're a seasoned vet now. You've been here 12 years, so you're as much of a local as anybody now. But what do you think is special about, or I guess what did you see about the community of the Shoals and in general? How did the Shoals deliver on that promise, right? Like if you see there's a bit of a picture painted for you and you see a lot of opportunities to serve and to be a part of it and to enjoy it as well. What are some of the things that have really, come to fruition that you expected whenever you saw that? I'm interested, from somebody who outside looking in.
Well, when I remember for my job interview, I flew into the Muscle Shoals Airport.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of a culture shock. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this?
So for people who don't know, Muscle Shoals Airport is one runway.
Yes, tiny.
12 years ago or 13 years ago, it would have been you would have been on that really small, like 8-seater that a lot of people who've lived here for a while have done at least once or twice, and it's an experience. Yeah, if you've never flown on a small plane into a little airport with one guy at the security gate or whatever. So it's a culture shock for sure.
And I got off the plane, and when I walked out, a faculty member was there to pick me up, and they hugged me and welcomed me. And again, another culture shock. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?"
Yeah, welcome to the Shoals.
Welcome to the Shoals in the South. Sure. And it was that moment that I knew that this was something special and something different. And from that moment forward, it feels like the whole community has just wrapped me in hugs in so many ways, because the community is so open and embraces people. And so I've been able to raise my children here, and it's a wonderful place to raise children. But to be a part of a community that works together across nonprofits, across different sectors, to really pour into the community and address the community needs. And so I've been able, to be a part of a lot of different organizations and a lot of different boards and a lot of different initiatives. And every one of them has been a transformative experience for me.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dr. Andrea Hunt. I know I am. I wanted to take a quick second and thank the University of North Alabama, who's our sponsor. And I want to encourage you to go to una.edu/online. That's where you're going to find all of our online programs and learn about scholarships and other opportunities to learn with us online. We have so many great programs around maybe some things that you're interested in if you're watching this interview around social work and sociology. So many things that you can do online. You can also contact our recruiters, our professors, our program coordinators, whoever you want to talk to through our website. So we encourage you to do that. And if you are not already, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, and follow us on YouTube now that we have some cool stuff that we're sharing on there. So thanks for tuning in, and now we will get back to our conversation with Dr. Andrea Hunt. So tell me about, what does advocacy for underserved communities look like in your work here now in the Shoals, now that you're here and you're a staple in the community, not just a part of it. What does your work and advocacy look like just day to day?
Well, there's the work that I do in the community and the work that I do here on campus, and there is also work that bridges those things as well. So some of the work that I do here on campus is supporting our first-generation students, because that is part of my own background. I'm also interested in supporting foster youth that are coming out of the foster system and transitioning into higher education. So recent studies show that only about 3 to 4% of former foster care youth graduate with a 4-year degree. And so that is something that I'm deeply interested in, because those students often are first-generation students as well. And so that's one of the areas that bridges my community work, because I work with youth in foster care, and then my campus work of thinking about how do we build support structures to help in that transition for foster youth into college, and what are the resources, the unique resources and supports that they need to be successful. So I'm really interested in that. I organize our high school STEM camp, which is so much fun to do. We have 2 camps that come on campus the first week of June, and we have high school students from across the state that will come, along with students from Tennessee and Mississippi. We also partner with our Northwest Shoals Community College Talent Search program, so we have a lot of students that are potentially going to be the first in their family to graduate college. And so we have them come on campus. They're engaging with our STEM faculty. And some of the most fun that I have in the work that I do is sitting in those lectures with students and faculty, because you don't always get to see the way that your colleagues teach. And I get to do that. And so when I'm out talking to people about what it might be like majoring in chemistry or pursuing a major in biology or engineering, that I have some experience sitting in those classes. And so I also stay on campus with those students, which is a whole experience in and of itself, staying in the residence halls at my age. But it is a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to see those students connect with each other, to come in sometimes not knowing another person that is there, and to leave hugging, trying to get phone numbers, wanting to stay connected. And that is because of the experience that they have here on campus. And I owe so much of that to the faculty who take part in that, but also our camp counselors who are UNA students who really keep them engaged. And, and I hope that those students maybe will come to UNA one day, but that's not really the purpose of the camp. The purpose of the camp is to excite them about possibilities for their future and to introduce them to what careers in STEM fields can look like. And so we have lots and lots of fun, but I spend the week after really recuperating from that, because it takes a lot of energy to keep up with high school students and to keep them engaged all day.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. My wife has worked in admissions and enrollment for a number of years, and she was on campus for overnight SOAR on campus throughout the summer, and still in there hanging in with them, and just has a lot of energy, I think, as a result of that. It's really awesome. Keeps you young, as they say.
It does. One of the other opportunities that I've had this past year has been with a colleague, Jason McCall, in our Department of English. We have been going over to the SPAN program of Lauderdale County, which is a juvenile diversion program. And so those students are sent there. It's basically kind of a day program. They do their school there, they have counseling there, and then they have outside folks that come in and do supplemental programming for them. And so Jason and I have been going over and teaching creative writing to the youth that are there. And again, that's one of those other experiences where it's transformative for me, but also being able to see them change in the way that they think about creative writing and poetry and sharing their feelings, articulating their thoughts. And when we come in, they're a little standoffish, and then by the end of it, they are writing and doing all kinds of things. And I continue to be impressed with the young people that are part of that program, and it says a lot about the director, Anthony Brooks, and his staff, the kind of environment that they create over there, because we go in and they're just open. The students are open. They're open to writing. They will read their work in front of their peers, which is a very vulnerable experience to do. And so I recently saw two of the graduates last week at juvenile court, and got to be there as they were released off of probation, and to walk in and to see them, and they see me and they're smiling, and it's that connection that happened there through writing that then transcends into the community. And so that's been a really fun experience that Jason and I will continue as well. And then the other work that I do in the community related to my counseling practice, working with youth in foster care and their families, and then also youth that are involved in the criminal legal system. And in all of that work, it's really about education. Education for them, education for their families, whether it is education about resources, whether it's
just
parenting,
exposing them to what's available,
in the community, whether it's parenting education, whether it's psychoeducation. So all of that work is really tied together in ways that exemplify the transformative power of education.
What is the moment for you that because you've gotten to witness this so often, for people who don't get exposure to this or don't have this experience, What would you say is typically or commonly the moment where you see a light go off in a student's mind, that you're hopeful will impact them sort of in an ongoing way, sort of not just a way that enriches what they're already doing, but really helps them see what's possible and set the course for what they're capable of? What is there a common moment that happens? Is there a formula to it, or is it different with every student? I'm just curious of where the real transformation actually occurs, from case to case.
Well, for my college students, I get to see it in class all the time, where you can tell by their facial expressions that something clicks, that, we've been talking about something in class and it has clicked for them, where it has given them some conceptual tools to understand something in their life. And they'll stay after class, they'll ask questions about it, and then okay, this is something
it's registering.
It's making sense to them, whether that's about their own life or whether it's about the lives of other people that they know, and it sparked an interest in them that they want to continue to pursue. And so I tell families during SOAR, because I talk to parents at Family SOAR, that it is a real honor to be even just a small part of a student's educational experience, because you get to see those things.
Right.
Get to see those things happen in real time.
Yeah.
And so for them, you can see that in class. For the youth that I work with in the community, so much of it is about building connections, that they are connecting with you in ways that they feel seen and heard and valued. And when they feel that, there's then this openness to learning about other things. But they can also build up walls and barriers because, they've been hurt. And so some people will say, I don't want to work with teens because they're so hard. And that's why I do like working with teens, because when you build that relationship with them and you see then the walls come down a little bit, and that they are becoming a little more open to learning, a little more open to change, then you get to realize then that, okay, you may not see all of that change happen, that may be down the road, but when you see those walls start coming down a little bit, that's, for me, is the light bulb moment for when I'm working with those youth.
Well, and I'm sure you made this connection before, but it sounds like that was the light bulb moment for you, in which you mentioned it while you were getting your master's in Mobile, but it wasn't necessarily education is not about what you are learning. So often the power of education is that you learn how to learn, and you learn as a result what you are capable of. That's the light bulb, and that seemed to be yours as well, that, 2 years before you were where you were, getting your master's, you didn't even know an advanced degree was a thing. Yeah. You didn't even know that existed. And 2 years later, you're literally putting into practice and tapping into something, deep within yourself and putting it into practice in an expert way. That's a pretty rapid transformation that was made possible by just kind of exposing you to that. So, transformative is kind of an understatement for some people. And like I asked you earlier about how, the challenges of maybe connecting with a community that feels a million miles away. Not only is that connection hard for you, to maybe see how you relate, or it takes a little while to see how you relate to people who are from a different culture, different background, but you find what you have in common. Do you find that that's also hard for students today to connect with you? Perhaps if they see this professor or some, Dr. so-and-so, I'm just a kid in juvenile detention, like I've made mistakes, and I'm not, they may never talk to somebody with, that pedigree or those credentials, right? Or not that they're even thinking about that, but that's an intimidating experience. So how do you break down those walls for them? How do you, in a sense, like open those doors to them early on in those interactions?
Well, I think part of it, even for myself, I'm still maybe in a little shock or awe or wondering, like, even how I got here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have this doctor in front of my name. Like, what is that? And so I try to stay humble about those kinds of things. But working with youth in the community is a whole lot of fun because it's such, that those teen years are an important developmental time. So if we look at like Erickson's stages of psychosocial development, that is the period of their life where they're trying to figure out who they are. And so there's lots of emotions, there's lots of feelings that are going on. And so I try to always remember what it was like for me as a teen and find ways to connect with young people. I think it helps that I have lots of tattoos and I listen to a lot of music and I stay up on pop culture and we talk about those things. And, I have teens as well. And so I kind of know what's going on in the teen kind of lexicon right now.
They just let you think that you know what's going on, maybe. Awesome.
And so being able to connect with people on their level of not going in as, well, I'm the authority figure, but that I'm here to get to know you and build a relationship and be a person that you feel like you can trust so that you can open up, because teens are going through a lot of things in their life. There's a lot of decisions and that they're making at a time where many of us as adults didn't have some of those same experiences. We didn't have social media that was really shaping so much of our life, and so they're going through so many things and they need people in their life that they can ask questions to, that they can say, I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do in this situation, or I need help with something. And so, again, I try to always remember the things that teens are interested in and know some things about those, but also try to find the things that will help us connect in some way. And so what are the common interests that we have? But also just being consistent with them, continuing to show up in the same way.
You said you were, at a hearing for the students that you were working with. I mean, being there in these difficult, challenging but important moments in their life is it seems like that's really crucial, and it's also admirable, by the way. But that seems like if you show up for the easy stuff but not the hard stuff, then you're kind of breaking trust. Maybe. Wow. We're talking about it on about a lot of this on sort of like a one-on-one basis or case by case maybe. What about like from a macro sense, 30,000 foot view? What are some of the most compelling things that have opened your eyes in your research and in your deepening your understanding of these things from a high level? What are some of the transformative impacts that this has on not just individuals but communities at large? How have you seen that play out?
Well, when we're thinking about, like you said, that individual level and that macro level of understanding that those things that are happening more at the macro level are manifesting in those individual level problems or issues or challenges that we may see when you do that work one-on-one with folks. But taking that step back and seeing what are the issues that communities are facing, that regions are facing. When we think about it at that level, we also have to be aware of what are the policies and practices at the legislative level that are trickling down into communities and affecting resource allocation in communities through municipalities, but also what's happening in the educational system. And so having an understanding of those things, also understanding what does the economic structure look like in an area. And so when we are looking at social class differences or wanting to address poverty, we really have to have an understanding of that larger economic structure. And what does the availability of jobs look like in a community? What does the pay look like? And how can we be a part of that that level of economic development. So if you are interested in working with individuals, then you have to also be interested in what's happening at a community level. So if I'm working with an individual that is experiencing poverty or job insecurity, then I need to also be interested in the economic development of a community and be a part of those conversations as well, of what kinds of jobs are we bringing into a community, how can we support continued career development in community, so that we're matching up the skills that people have in a community with the jobs that are available. So it brings us to, again, all these larger things that we see, happening in individuals or families' lives that play out in ways that lead to different kinds of outcomes. And it takes people to be involved in the legislative process. It takes people to be involved in, the community of what's happening in a community, and how can we advocate for the things that the community as a whole needs.
So education is, I think it's easy to assume whenever we talk about education as this transformative tool for underserved communities. Education is not always directed at the community itself. It's directed at legislators and people in power who have a lot at their disposal that they may not even realize that could change the lives of people in a neighborhood or in an entire district. What does that look like for you on a in your daily life or in your advocacy work? How does that play out in what you do? How do you partner with the Shoals community? How do you partner with research for others and things like that?
So I've had the opportunity of being a part of the Women's Foundation of Alabama, their policy fellowship program, which gave me a much better view of what happens at that level. Because I'll admit, I do a lot of things at the macro level, but really didn't have a full understanding of the legislative process. So I always encourage all my students, if they have a chance to go to Montgomery during the legislative session, they should, just so that they can have an understanding of how decisions are made and what goes into that, and that they can be a part of that. They can be an active part of that. I've also worked with Alabama Appleseed on some different legislation and got to see from that end, well, what's involved in putting a piece of legislation together. Again, most people, we don't really kind of see that part of it, and we may be working with individuals or nonprofits or in the education sector, but we really don't see what goes into looking at something at that level. And so I've put myself out there to be a part of some different organizations who are doing that work, to really learn from them what's involved in this process, whether it's changing our educational funding model in the state. That was one of the things that came up this legislative session. And there was a lot of work that organizations did to really get to the point where it could be on the floor for discussion. And that is one of the things that will directly impact communities, of what's the level of funding that's going into schools that have maybe higher numbers of students that need special education, or that we need gifted programs in schools, or English as second language programs. And so being a part of those conversations and learning about all of the work that goes in on that end, that then ends up in a bill that then can impact communities and families and individuals in such an important way.
Yeah, it's so important. This balance I'm hearing is, something that I think I underestimate the importance of, that balance of not only working with people one-on-one, but taking those stories to the places that need to hear them the most at times, just so that they can have a balanced perspective on the decisions that they're making for a really large constituency of people. So it's so cool to see how those two are not only connected, but it's kind of vital that they stay connected.
Yes,
and that those stories inform one another.
Well, when we think about programs like juvenile diversion programs, this is one of the things that has been recommended through the Juvenile Justice Task Force many years ago for the state of Alabama. So it takes constant telling those success stories of how those programs have changed people's lives to help legislators remember the importance of these things and to help encourage the funding of those programs.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation. Just wanted to remind you to visit una.edu/online to learn more about programs around sociology, social work, but everything from our Masters of Business to our science programs. We have so many amazing things that we're doing, engineering things here at UNA that you can explore. You can look through all of our programs at una.edu/online. You can talk to our recruiters. Let us know some information about you so we can help you find some solutions that you're looking for. You can talk with our program coordinators. All the experts here at our university are at your disposal through our website. So make sure and visit that. And if you're not, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn, X, formerly known as Twitter, and of course now YouTube with all this cool stuff that we're doing there now. So we'll go back to our conversation with Dr. Andrea Hunt at this time. So you mentioned that, students at UNA get to go to Montgomery to learn about what this process actually looks like, the legislative process, how decisions actually get made, how bills get signed, all that stuff. And not only do they get to go observe that and be spectators, but to be a part of it. You get to, you are, as a citizen of the state and as a student, your voice matters, and people want to know what you think. And so what are our programs directly in the classroom and outside of the classroom? What do our programs look like as far as training future Andrea Hunts of the world to go out in the world and have these experiences and commit to these changes on a one-on-one basis, but also at a high level? What are we doing at UNA, do you think, to help prepare students for that kind of future for themselves?
Well, many faculty are incorporating these kinds of opportunities into their classroom as forms of experiential learning. And so how do we take what we're doing in terms of acquiring the conceptual knowledge, the theoretical knowledge, but then putting that into practice? And so, we have a lot of focus on experiential learning at the university, and faculty have been doing this for quite some time. But getting students in the community, taking students to Montgomery during the legislative session, connecting students with community-based organizations, whether that's through service learning or work-based learning. And so we already have a strong connection of this throughout the curriculum. But there's so many other opportunities at UNA to be a part of advocacy work. And so whether that's through our Inside Out program in the Restorative Justice Lab, or whether that's through volunteering with Common Ground or Rescue Me Project, or whether that's going to our volunteer fair that we have at the beginning of every fall. There's all of these things that's embedded throughout students' experience at UNA. The Mitchell West Center also does a lot of outreach and education on campus to help students get plugged into these opportunities. And we're bringing back alternative breaks. So this will be a big opportunity for students to, use part of their fall break or spring break to go do service work in another community.
Okay, great. Yeah. That's what I thought you were referring to when you said alternative breaks. I remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's opportunities just even on campus. I mean, for students to be, to help one another in a lot of ways, with tutoring and
our peer tutoring opportunities, working in the writing center, or if you're a STEM major, we have our STEM tutoring lab. But also a lot of our student organizations do really important work on this campus and in the community.
Tell me more about that.
We have lots of registered student organizations, whether it's through clubs connected by shared interest or some of our fraternities or sororities, but there's a lot of philanthropy work that goes on throughout those organizations and a lot of volunteer hours that those organizations are putting in. Some of that may look like going out in the community and working with different organizations. Some of that may also look like doing school supply drives for students here on campus, or doing food drives and contributing to our food pantry here on campus. And so there's a lot of ways that students are helping each other, which again is another one of those things that makes this university particularly special, is the way that students are really connected to each other and want to see each other succeed.
I find that the thing that's probably the most sort of what's at the nucleus of what makes the Shoals special is kind of the same thing what makes UNA special. It's people who don't take their resources for granted a lot of the time. So if a student has something that another student needs, that is not a it's not a, I'm trying to word this correctly, but it doesn't seem that difficult to convince them to be a part of the change that is needed in the lives of people around them. It's so much of our students, like you said, I mean, we're around 20%. They're the first person in their family to even go to college, and we have such a spectrum of backgrounds and socioeconomic diversity and regional diversity. Students from all over the world are rubbing shoulders every day and learning new things from one another, let alone the classroom experience or the community experiences that we offer. I mean, just getting to sit across from a student from another country, or from maybe they're from an underserved community and you've never even stepped foot in something like that, or maybe you are sharing your perspective as somebody who's from an underserved community, and to somebody who's never really even thought about what that might be like. There's all of these kind of close-knit opportunities to share those experiences. So now I'm just bragging about UNA, but I just think that that's why it's so important that we mirror that in all of these programs. All we're really doing is facilitating that change. So that can happen in the classroom, but it can happen in practice right when you walk out the door. And there's so many examples of that. And if you're on campus, you can see that so vividly, so quickly. And you're at the middle of tons of that. So cool to hear, where that comes from and how that's been informed over the years. And it's grown in the 12 years that you've been here for sure. And I know that you've had a lot to do with that. So we're just really appreciate that. The last thing I wanted to ask is, if you had sort of a single hope for just a student, the students that are coming through school now, the faces that you've seen, for all of these years, and how the culture that they're in, the world that the young people that you serve are in, and the world that the young people that go to school here are in. What is your biggest hope for them as it relates to this work and keeping education at the core of this, of these restorative programs and these things that can transform people's lives and give people in underserved communities opportunities that they can't get anywhere else? That education has to be the solution to that, because there's really no other way to do it. What is your hope for these students as they're entering into the world, and how they can do this?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going for all day, but if you had to pick one part of that you were the most hopeful about, or that you felt was the most pressing.
So I think there's a couple of things that I am really hopeful for and want students to really think about are the ways that they're connecting to other people, that relationships are important, mentoring is important, having a community is important, as you're going through different stages of your life, whether that is through those teen years or early adulthood as you're in college, or other kinds of post-high school, post-secondary training, and then as you transition into your career, connections are important. And so what are the ways that we are building connections with other people? And then also I hope that young people will develop a sense of social responsibility. And we do that through education because we learn about other people. We learn about communities. We learn about all of these different things. And so hopefully through that leads to a sense of social responsibility that our young people, will come through education and want to be a part of a community, be a part of their community, make a place their community, and contribute to that community in meaningful ways.
What an accomplishment that would be to foster those kinds of experiences and that kind of growth, and the people who are coming up coming up through school right now and entering into the working world and the world of advocacy here soon. It's awesome. Andrea, thanks so much for being here. This has been a super fun conversation, and I just love hearing everything you're doing, and hearing your insights on all this stuff is just really helpful. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back soon, so stay tuned for more episodes of UNA Talks.